Well, the latest reports from Syria say the regime has put more boots on the ground, launching assaults in and around Hama and Idlib. A monitoring group there says Syrian army forces, including pro-government militia, moved in to the rebel areas as Russian planes sent in a new wave of airstrikes. Well, for more on this now, let's bring in our international affairs editor, Douglas Herbert. Now, Douglas, we've also heard that Russia is saying that it is considering cooperating with the U.S. on these airstrikes. Is that indeed possible?
Yeah, first of all, the question is, what's that about? You know, it's interesting here because the pattern has been in the last few weeks is Russia. You hear a move by Russia. They're building up their military presence in western Syria. They're launching airstrikes. They're intensifying their military campaign. And in each case, the West begins with a position that's very far divergent from Russia's. And then you see sort of a creep towards getting a little closer to Russia's position, not agreeing with Russia, not saying we're on board, but basically having the NATO and the U.S. having to slightly adjust their position in reaction to what is essentially facts on the ground, a situation, whether you like it or not, this is the reality we now face and we have to deal with it. What is that reality? Well, last week we were talking about, remember that funny word everyone was using, deconfliction, which was basically the code word, the buzzword for Russian and U.S. military officials meeting simply to try to figure out how to avoid their planes crashing into each other and accidental catastrophic incidents in midair over in Syrian skies. Now we're hearing today the Pentagon has submitted sort of proposals to the Russian Defense Ministry, which are being discussed on an expert level, as the Russians say. The technical details are being worked out, which would be the word being used is cooperation. We're not just talking deconfliction anymore, but cooperation in targeted airstrikes on the Islamic State group. And here's me speculating right now. This is not no one has publicly said this. But what you can sort of look into this issue and say is that the United States, NATO, are looking at the situation, probably not liking what they see. We know they fiercely disputed Russia's contention that it's only going after Islamic State and other groups, related groups, terrorist organizations. And they're saying, look, we probably at this point can't stop Russia, but at least perhaps we could concentrate on our efforts on trying to make sure that if they're going to continue these airstrikes, we should do damage control and make sure that it's limited to the Islamic State group. It's a very interesting little shift there, and it's not a minor one if they do actually end up, in quotes, cooperating. What sort of cooperation will this be?
Now, in addition to all of that, the actual military operations on the ground have taken on a new dimension today.
Yeah. What we're hearing about, along with the intensifying Russian airstrikes in the skies, those are Russian airstrikes by Russian planes on targets mostly in northwestern Syria, around Hama, obviously, that province, and in neighboring Idlib province. We have the reports of a ground operation, not Russian troops on the ground, no Russian boots. But what we are hearing is it's Syrian forces, local allies of Syria, forces allied with them, and foreign militia. Now, obviously, once again, speculation. Hezbollah, backed by Iran, their boots could be on the ground. We can't say Iranian forces are on the ground. There had been sporadic reports last week from Lebanese sources, unnamed, that Iranian forces were in position, ready to launch. We don't know anything about that, cannot confirm that. But there does seem to be, yes, in some way, shape, or form, not Russians, but forces that would be presumably allied with Russia, allied with Bashar Assad and his regime, on the ground, coordinating with the airstrikes, working together.
All right, Doug, thank you for that. Our international affairs editor, Doug Herbert.